Hello and welcome to Wolf Ridge and the North Shore. My name is Caroline.
My name is Robbie, and we'll be your naturalists today as we explore spring plants.
Can't see a lot from the desk though. Let's take a look around.
Oh, look, a trillium. Nice. This is one of my favorite plants, and it's always fun to see it come up in the spring. Now this one is not quite flowered yet, but it will. Now flowering plants are also known as angiosperms, and they mean any plant that has a flower, and they're the most common type of plant in the world. This trillium flower is really nice because it shows all the different parts of a flower really well. The first thing that you'll notice when you look at a flower are the petals. These are often large and colorful and ring the important parts of the flower. Fun fact, flower petals are actually modified leaves. In this trillium, they are normally white, but occasionally they can be a bit pinkish. The parts that look like green petals are actually called sepals. Looking inside the flower, we can see a ring of different flower parts. These are called the stamen. They are the male flower part and produce pollen. In the very center of the plant, we have the pistil. This is the female part of the flower, and after fertilization, it will turn into both the plant's seeds as well as the fruit that surrounds them.
I'm sitting next to some spring beauties here. They're really lovely flowers. But these flowers are really hard for the plants to produce. It takes a lot of energy to make flowers. And the reason the plants put in all that energy is because flowers are really critical for reproduction. It's kind of like the flower is a billboard on the side of the road that's advertising, hey, we have nectar here, really awesome, sweet treat. And then the pollinators see those flowers and they come to them. And they also have a lovely smell too. They have this sweet smell that we can smell, and those pollinators will be picking up on those smells and be attracted to those flowers. You may have seen bees or butterflies or other insects flying from flower to flower all in a row, and those insects are often covered in pollen that they're depositing from one flower to the next. As pollinators go to flowers to get that really sweet nectar, they have to crawl inside the flower because that nectar is at the bottom, kind of deep inside the flower. As they're crawling to get there, they're rubbing up against the stamen or the male part of the flower and getting covered in pollen. Once the pollinator gets the nectar inside and goes to the next flower, it has to crawl inside the next one and then rubs its body against the female parts of the flower, the pistil. And in that way, the pollen from the pollinator gets transferred and fertilizes the flower. Robbie, do you see any plants or any pollinators?
Oh, look at that.
What?
I think it's a stinking Benjamin.
Oh my gosh, I think you're right. I think it is a stinking Benjamin.
Oh, this? No, this is a nodding trillium. Stinking Benjamin trilliums grow much further south and east. You'd be lucky if you found one in southern Wisconsin.
Wow, Danielle! Nice to see you out here. I'm really not surprised you're looking for spring ephemerals.
Isabel and I have been out here for the past few weeks looking at the changing phenology with these spring plants. Would you like to see some of them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Totally, that sounds awesome. Let's look at this trillium you were just talking about. This is a nodding trillium. It gets its name from the way that its head nods down towards the ground. And then the word trillium in Latin means three. So it has 3 leaves and eventually 3 petals and 3 sepals. Nodding trilliums are usually self-pollinated. So the pollen falls directly from the flower's anthers onto its own stigma. But sometimes it's also pollinated by insects traveling from one flower to another. Once the seeds are fully developed, they drop to the ground, and then ants gather them up like crazy because they really like eating the fatty outer layer of the seed. They carry them off to their food piles, eat that outer layer, and then leave the seed behind totally intact, and it gets to grow in a totally new spot from where the original flower was. Here we have spring beauties. These are some of the earliest flowers to come out, and they are pollinated a little bit more typically where we think of the insects going to find the flower. And actually, if you look really close, you'll see it has a bunch of little pink veins, and those veins act like runway lights, directing the insects exactly where the flower wants it to go, to the middle. You'll notice in a lot of the flowers that we're looking at today, a lot of them are white, and that's because making pigments and colors takes a lot of energy, which these early plants need to devote all of that energy towards growing really fast. One of my favorite spring plants is wild ginger, but you definitely have to practice your close observation skills to see it. It grows super low to the ground, and its flowers are actually sometimes even buried under dead leaves. might be wondering, why would a plant try to hide its flowers? But this plant's pollinators are actually living down on the ground. So wild ginger is pollinated by beetles and sometimes flies, which are already hanging out down there. Flowers of wild ginger also have a smell and color resembling rotting flesh, which beetles are super into.
Robbie, I had no idea how many different strategies flowers use to reproduce and attract pollinators.
I know, it's wild, like the wild ginger with the flower that looks like decaying flesh.
So weird.
Gross. Uh-oh, I think...
What?
Hold on. I think there's a leak in my boot.
I don't see a hole.
Oh, yep, definitely, there are a couple.
Wow, this is an amazing patch of leeks. These leeks are like spring onions and you can harvest them to eat. And even just sitting here, I can smell all the onions and garlics wafting up my nose.
Harvesting wild edibles is one of my favorite ways to learn more about plants. But before I ever harvest anything, I like to consider a few things. Number one, is the plant abundant enough in the area that I'm in that it's okay to take some? In some areas, wild leeks have been harvested so much that they've become locally extinct. So I follow the 1 in 10 rule when I'm harvesting them and only take 1 in every 10 plants I see. Since we're harvesting these plants to eat, I also want to make sure that I can identify it 100% correctly before I eat anything. Another plant that you're probably familiar with, but maybe didn't know is edible, is the common dandelion. People can actually eat all parts of the dandelion. They will use the leaves when they're young to make a salad. You can deep fry the flowers in batter. Yum. And people will even take the roots and turn them into a tea that tastes like coffee. Just like with any other plant, you want to be 100% sure of what you're harvesting. Also, dandelions often grow along roadsides and in other areas that have been sprayed with pesticides, so make sure that you harvest thoughtfully.
Another thing people like to use plants for is natural dyes. We have a plant around here called bloodroot that makes a great dye. Now, with a name like bloodroot, you might start to think that it maybe has a red root or that when you snap the root, it starts bleeding, and you'd be right. Here's one that I've already dug up. If you can see that red root there, let's try to snap it open. It has a red-orange sap that oozes out. And that sap has been traditionally used by indigenous communities for dyeing baskets and many other things. I like learning about the natural history of plants as well. A lot of plants can have some pretty odd names, but when you look back in history to see how they were used or who named them, that name can end up making sense. For example, this plant here is called cut-leaved toothwort. When you hear wart in the plant's name, that means it was thought to be a remedy for something, a medicine, and then the body part that it was thought to help heal. So a toothwort was thought to be a remedy for a toothache. You know, this doesn't really look like a tooth though. We have to dig a little bit deeper to find out.
There's the tooth.
Another great way to study plants is to press them.
To press a plant, you really just need the plant itself, a heavy book, and put it in between 2 pieces of paper. This really helps to dry it out quickly. It's almost like making a plant mummy so that you keep some of the color of the plant too.
A pressed plant is also a great thing to add to your nature journal.
Here's an example of a plant I pressed last summer. If you have anything you've done in your nature journal that you'd be willing to share with us, we'd love to see what you have and are putting together a blog. You can find the link in our video description.
Wow, it's really impressive to me how many uses people have for plants.
And I was amazed by how intricate the flowers can be and all of their different designs.
I know, I was even surprised at how many plants have flowers.
Like this maple tree, for example. I mean, I never knew that a maple could have such beautiful flowers like this. You all should go walk around your neighborhood, maybe go to a local park and see if you can find flowers where you didn't think you'd see them before.
And thank you for joining us for this week when we explored spring plants. Make sure to check in next week while we talk about frogs and toads. G'day, mate. Looking for some giant toads out here in the outback? Oh, I think I see one. Oh!
Crikey! Join us next week for Frogs and Toads. Caroline, I think we've been at this desk a little bit too long today. What do you say we take a walk and explore the outdoors.
Let's do it.
Alrighty, see you next week.
I'll tell you, Peter, I don't think they're legitimate gator hunters. When I said gator, she didn't even know what I was talking about.
Well, this plant here is called cutleaf toothwort.
Here next to me, we have the toothwort cutleaf. No, cutleaf towwort. Leafy tooth. Cutthroat tooth fairy.
It's cutleaf toothwort.
Cutleaf. What did I say before? Cut plant vascular. Okay, we gotta be done.